Hi guys, Numis here. Welcome back to Northam City for episode number 6. In this episode, I'll be building what can be considered the downtown area of this first district, along with the first train station for a commuter train network, along with some highway reworks. But first of all, what you can see on screen, I am making some changes to the terrain of the map. Before I built out more, I wanted to craft the terrain into something closer to the image I had in my head of the city. I imagined these different islands connected by bridges. The areas of the map more on the outside of the city proper, I will leave mostly untouched though. And once I finish this, I'll throw up a short overview shot so you can see what the overall geography looks like after this terrain network rework. With some terrain rework done, I need to do some changes to the highway. There's some new rivers with the landscape being split into more islands, so I want to make sure the highways follow this in a way that makes more sense. The most important thing is to make the highways go completely straight when they cross over rivers, because they will most likely be either suspension or cable-stayed bridges to let ships pass under, and you generally want them to be very straight for this. The service interchange feeding into the big boulevard could use some improvements, especially since I am building around it in this build. The ramps are upgraded to 2 lanes to disperse the traffic a little better, with each of them dedicated to different directions at the junction. With this, I also changed some of the highways directly before the interchange to improve some of that lane math.
Get money, baby.
I normally don't pay too much attention to signs on highways, but because this is an American city where urban highways are pretty prominent, I wanted to lean into it. So I made a little bit of lore for the city by naming some highways, bridges, and so on. The elevated highway will be called the Astoria Oakland Expressway, as it serves mainly those 2 districts. I also decided that outside the city, this will connect to a highway which is called Interstate 92. Or I-92 for short. Doing some research, I noticed many of the interstates around New York and New Jersey were roughly around the 90s, and as far as I can see, no real-life interstates use the number 92, so it felt pretty perfect. And I include this in some designs. Finally, we got the West Bay Bridge. This is just a name I picked for whatever bridge will be built to the rest of Astoria and Oakland, to connect this expressway across the water into the interstate and whatever suburbs lay out that way. Plus I of course had to add some signs for the exit indicating the streets they connect to. And this is where I have the 2 lane ramps, which connect each to different avenues that meet at the junction under the interchange. So you can see I started to lay out some train tracks and bridging over the interchange. And this is to get started on what will be the commuter train network in the city, or one of them at least. One of the main inspirations are American commuter rail networks like, for example, Long Island Railroad in New York State. I'm making the station completely custom, and network I use here is a station track for an island platform. When I rode the Long Island Railroad myself, the island platform layout seemed to be pretty common, so I lean into that here. I don't use IMT for placing the platform this time, but rather placing them by hand. This is because I got these North American platforms which work with adaptive networks, so I can change a few different things about the look with a few clicks, and that is such a great asset. It's a pretty old station, probably built around the 1850s, when Astoria was a city of its own before being incorporated into Northam City. And to signify this, I use some wooden platforms. What I want for the look of the station as a whole is a very old station that is still well used and has had some modern additions over the years, without losing its charm. The station also sits on top of these old arched stone walls, with stone stairs inside and leading up to the platform, which I think brings a lot to the aesthetics. You can probably see the station is pretty long, and I wanted to make this really stand out from the subway network, longer trains and larger stations. The network is more meant for traveling longer distances, with some pretty hectic rush hours of commuters going into the city, so it's built for this purpose. The trains I am using are from New Jersey Transit, I believe, and I actually had a version with rendered interiors, which I just had to get. It might hurt the FPS a little, but they are amazing, so I had to use them, especially for those closer shots inside the station. Not sure what else I can say about the station. For the parts to make it function, I used the pedestrian parts from Clues again, and tweaked them with Node Controller to make them fit as perfectly as possible to the shape of the stairs. I also add some details on the inside of the station below the platform, with benches, ticket machines and so on, plus the elevators that lead up to the platform. And I also add a bunch of station signs, transit agency branding, and some wayfinding signs as a final touch. Anyways, I'll turn up the music to let you watch the station unfold, and I'll be back in a bit. now I'm going into adding some of the final details of the station. These catenaries seem to be floating in the air right now, but they should end up looking sensibly in a second once they are attached to some beams above. The asset I use for the platform hall is a depot building from Milwaukee, I think it is. It has this worn metal look, almost industrial in a way, that I really liked and that I think I want to make an aesthetic of stations on this network. Along the sides I also cover up with some windows, which are platform hall wall covers, I think they are called, from the Dresden Neustadt station pack. And I think they complement each other perfectly, and I really like the end result it gives to kind of finish off the station. To finish with some extra details on the station, I thought of adding some small shops and eating places within these arched stone walls. I haven't really seen any inspiration for a station like this in America, with shops and such underneath an elevated station. But if there isn't anything like this, I'm fine with that, because this is a fictional city, and it would just add a little touch of uniqueness. I do think it fits, even if it might not exist in real life anywhere. The open area in front of the station, at least on this side that doesn't have a behemoth of an elevated freeway blocking it, has always been an important marketplace. While it might have looked very different historically, it still is a pretty bustling area. Nowadays it doesn't have any official market stands, but the tradition has been kept on by a lot of locals just setting up stands and selling whatever, even if they might not have any permits for it. This is definitely the place to go in Astoria if you want to grab some cheap socks or t-shirts. So before we get started on building this actual district in the game, I want to just go into Google Maps a bit to just show around a bit of what is the inspiration for this area. So this is what is considered the downtown area of Flushing, which is pretty much like an area within Queens, a borough in New York. And Flushing, as far as I know, is like the main Asian American neighborhood in New York. And you can see here, it's got like a nice mix of both modern and like classical like New York style buildings. And you see just everywhere there's like Asian signs and Asian language. There is mostly Chinese writings, but there's also, I think, like Japanese, Korean, and others, like other Asian cultures that has like shops and restaurants around here. And I'm just gonna go through a bit to just see a bit of the inspiration for what I'm gonna be building. And you see here also it has like an elevated rail line crossing over it, which is also gonna be the case because you see just now I built this station, Astoria station, which has tracks crossing over right above what will be this district here. And I think I'm gonna have a bit more height in what I'll be building, but this mix of like classical architecture for New York and some modern architecture with just a lot of Asian like signs and businesses all over the place. And as far as I heard, this is kind of the place you would go. You would have like restaurants which doesn't have menus in English, so it's maybe a bit more authentic than like the Chinatown in Manhattan, for example. And I would just also want to go a bit into Google Earth to see like an overview. You see some of these buildings. It looks like there's like residential towers or like apartment buildings that's been almost like tacked on top of what looks like small malls or shopping centers. So this is a bit of inspiration for like the first few buildings that I'm plopping down in the time lapse, which is I'm using this shopping center asset or shop assets in like a square, and then I'm just be putting like a residential skyscraper right on top of it, so they kind of look connected together. But yeah, with that I'm just gonna be going into the time lapse, and then I'll talk a bit more when there's something else to say about what I'm building in the video. I was struggling a bit about what to do with this junction when it came to how pedestrians were interacting with it. It seemed a bit inconvenient and also dangerous to walk across a 4-lane avenue and a highway ramp in one go, so it was the perfect opportunity to make a pedestrian overpass. Most times a pedestrian overpass is really more of a way to make traffic better for cars, but in that sense I think that this junction makes perfect sense to build one. For the overpass I used some close parts with green roofs activated through Adaptive Networks mod and some stairs with IMT. A fun detail I add is also a worn metal plate with the name Astoria painted on by some graffiti artist, I imagine. There's lots of street parking around here, but I wanted to add some variety as well and also get some parking along the avenue. So I decided to make a custom underground parking garage. To do this, I sink down a parking lot road and decorate around the entrance with some retaining walls, ploppable surfaces and some props. Then I also have some buildings converted to procedural objects to sit above it where you can see down to the parking garage. This is because if you have it as a normal building, then the foundation will kind of spill down and block the entire garage. And to make it function, I can just put some block service cubes inside the building later, so it's actually still works as a residential building or shop or whatever it's supposed to be. So now I've basically put in all the buildings for this episode, but there's still a lot more detailing to do. First off, I want to go into some mixed-use buildings with first-floor shops in all the apartment buildings are plopped down. On the workshop I found these great props from Hong Kong, which are like Hong Kong shops, and they were perfect for the kind of look I wanted here. But since they own the props, I need to make sure they are functional as commercial zoning as well. I just go in to find it and line up all of the props from this back, and then I place a commercial block service cube directly behind them. This then gives me a bunch of shops I can copy and paste a lot of different places to place shops along the streets. Earlier in the video, I put down a few subway entrances, but didn't really do much more with them. What they are leading to is a new subway line, which goes along Astoria Boulevard and makes a turn towards the port at the junction between Astoria Boulevard and Cobblepot Boulevard. There will be two lines running along this corridor, like many other places in the city, and these will be the yellow lines. The D train runs local, while the E train runs express. I don't actually have the footage of building the tracks below here, but it's something you haven't seen before. What you'll see is some detailing of the stations. Most of it is the same details I add to most subway stations. I've stripped off most of the props with adaptive networks, so I can detail the station how I want. Some station signs and signs to indicate the lines running through and the directions they are heading. And I use IMT to cover up the platforms already on the station to the platform networks I've used elsewhere in more custom stations. I have a few bigger commercial buildings, which I imagine to be shopping malls, and I want to cover them with a lot of store signs. As you could have seen from the inspiration I was looking at around the downtown area of Flushing. Going on a bit of a subscription spree on the workshop, I found a lot of store signs, neon signs and adverts from Asian cities that I could use. This is a detail that I think is the most important to really make it feel like the kind of neighborhood I'm trying to take inspiration from. So I do my best to cluster all these signs together. I put them everywhere it makes sense, and especially on the shop presenting buildings have this long row of store signs going down the side of the building. With all the neon signs, it certainly gives it a bit more of a cyberpunk feel than Flushing, especially since some of the assets I'm using here are cyberpunk signs. But I think I really like how it turned out, and I did want it to stand apart. So the biggest Chinatown in Northam City is just a little more cyberpunk than the one in New York. There was this gap between some buildings which almost acts as a small pedestrian street, so I decided to put in a little outdoor seating here, as there would be some eating places inside the buildings here. Lastly, I put some murals on a few walls, and I did some light detailing around what is the main public library of Astoria. Anyways, that is it for this episode. I really hope you enjoyed it if you made it this far. A like and subscribe would be greatly appreciated. And please comment if you have any thoughts, praise or critique alike. I also got a Patreon page, in case you'd wish to support me further. Have a great rest of the day, hope to see you next time, and stay tuned for some cinematics.